This is UMAR AHMED for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. It's the morning after, joined by Barry Hearn. The boy's got his belts back.
Well, yeah, it's a funny feeling, isn't it? Because obviously it's ecstatic on the night and then it just drifts down and life goes on. Delighted for him, absolutely delighted for him. Brilliant performance and back to normal. Normal service has been resumed. So, with lots of other things to think about now, about where does he go from here and what's happened. But I think we've got to just spend a few days enjoying the moment.
Definitely. How did you like a trimmer, leaner Joshua?
Well, I liked it for the, I liked it for the style of fight that was necessary to win with the lowest risk ratio. He boxed superbly well at range. Most people speculated that he needed to box at range because of how dangerous Ruiz is. And he fulfilled all of his promises to be a more intelligent fighter and to fight a winning fight. It was a work of art rather than a smash and grab. But he didn't have the risk involved of trading with Ruiz, who is, as I say, a very dangerous fighter.
Ruiz admitted after that he was overweight and didn't train properly. Do you think he's trying to make excuses?
Not really. It wasn't a surprise. It's not a surprising statement to say he was overweight, because he was. And the only person that knew he didn't train properly, presumably, was Andy Ruiz. But, you've got to understand the mentality of fighters that have come from struggling all their lives to being a champion and the change of their circumstance. And it's easy to just step off that lifestyle of a fighter, celebrate a bit too much and pay a price for it. And, Andy's obviously come to terms with the fact that he did. He was heavy. He's still dangerous. He can still punch, and goodness me, he can still take a punch. So, you can't knock him for that. But I understand. People go, why shouldn't he have been leaner and slimmer? He's probably spent the first 3 months of his championship reign at parties and functions and press, and that sometimes throws you a little bit. And that's obviously what's happened to him. But he'll come back. I think he's a great fighter, and I think he will be involved in some really fabulous fights because his style is very exciting.
There was a lot of talk before the fight about Joshua's mentality, obviously recovering from a loss. How's he going to deal with that? But he showed immense mental strength in there last night. Yeah,
it's so easy to get sucked in when things are going well. You think, now it's a bit like a bullfighter, isn't it? Now the coup de grace is coming, and he restrained himself from doing that. There was a couple of times in the fight I think he thought about steaming in, but he kept himself very well. And it was a tough fight for Anthony because it was such a seismic loss at Madison Square Gardens. Everything you built up, everything you worked for, fighting an opponent which no one rated, or bookmakers made you massive odds on, and suddenly you've left with no belts. So he had to come to terms with that, which I think was difficult. But in 6 months, he did a really good job on convincing himself or his brain that it was going to be okay, get your tactics sorted out, stick to your game plan, and the belts are coming home. He did it. I was absolutely amazed that he managed to keep that mentality for the full 12 rounds. No showboating, just did the job very professionally, and really a shutout, a one-sided fight by way of scores. I don't think he took more than 3-4 punches in the entire fight, dominated tactically, and did exactly what McCracken and the team worked out. So hats off to him. A brilliant performance.
As you said, everyone's going to be thinking about what's next for Anthony Joshua. Would you like to see him back in the UK for that Pulev fight, which we expect next?
Yeah, I don't. It's not my call, but I don't see living in a goldfish bowl is a good example to global fighters. Anthony is a global star, and he's got to be prepared to go where the demand is. And we'd all love it back in the UK, of course we would. But whether we end up there, it'll depend on circumstance, offers. There's an awful lot of interest in Anthony Joshua. It's remarkable that his profile, if you want to call it brand value, is without doubt bigger today than it was prior to losing to Andy Ruiz. People love a comeback story, and he's a very articulate, intelligent young man, so he comes across really well. and he boxed a sort of masterclass box. So it's he's going to be in demand all around the world, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's going to fight his next 10 fights in England or whatever. He's going to go where it makes the most sense to go, and in a career like professional boxing, most sense is usually most money.
I did state the UK point because Pulev obviously is a European, so there might be less. I'm not saying there won't be demand from America. Of course there will be. It might be less because he's a European. He hasn't boxed at Wembley for a long time. We know Joshua Pulev would do Wembley like that, and it would be a nice homecoming. Just a good idea, I think.
I think it's a great idea, and I think I'd love to see it at Wembley. If it's Pulev, as you say, but I don't think it really matters whether you're English, European, or American. The numbers that come in from all over the world for the Ruiz fight were huge, and that's only made AJ more attractive to broadcasters, including American. You know, our DAZN partners were over the moon with the numbers they got yesterday in a fight that was, 5 o'clock East Coast, 1 o'clock in the afternoon West Coast, and they did some really good numbers. So for the brand of AJ and his appeal, I don't think it matters where you come from, but personally, of course, I'd love to see Wembley. There's 90,000 people, and maybe we can beat Carl Froch's 80,000. So.
Another fight that could land at Wembley is Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua. That would be some rematch, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Dillian's in an interesting position now, post-clearance from the UCAD or wherever. He's hungry. He struggled a little bit yesterday because obviously I think he took the fight too short notice, but he was just desperate to get back in the ring, and he got the win, which is the most important thing.
Out of shape.
Yeah, I know he was, and he knows it himself, but it was a question of, do I wait until February, March, or do I sneak one in before Christmas? And I think got the opponent dead right. It was quite a competitive fight. But Dillian's right up there with the big fights, just because you don't know what's happening in professional boxing. You don't know whether AJ's going to vacate belts, because everyone else will think, oh, AJ's coming, get the checkbook out. It doesn't work like that. But obviously we've got the flexibility to do whatever makes sense, and I think the heavyweight division, everyone's talking about it because there's so many different scenarios. We've got Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder we'll be talking about a lot over the next few weeks. What's going to happen there? You've got Usyk's mandatory for WBO, and he's obviously a Matchroom contracted fighter. So, Dillian Whyte, Chisora, there's so much choice.
Hunter and Povetkin draw last night.
Yeah, there's just so much choice in the heavyweight division, and that's good for everybody because I think it keeps everybody active, and I like the thought of Anthony Joshua being unified. But I can actually see, for the bigger picture of boxing, that there's more value to having lots of different champions and then rebuild the unification process.
Just lastly, you were obviously there ringside last night. How was it received by the Saudis and the Royals?
Well, I think it's an understatement to say they absolutely loved it. They were ecstatic. Their plan is obviously to look at sport, not just boxing, but a lot of sport, in a way to try and get their own young population more active. And so in a way they see boxing, and Anthony Joshua's boxing as an advert to young people to say, get involved in sport. So the performance last night, the atmosphere, the fact that it was sold out, the fact that everyone around the world is talking about the fight from Saudi Arabia, they were really, really pleased. I've seen several members of the government since we've been here, and they are ecstatic is the only word I'd use.
Well, all in all, a very good night in Saudi Arabia. Barry, thank you very much for your time all week in Saudi, although you arrived on Thursday?
Wednesday night late, and the World Darts Championship starts on Friday, so it's time to go.
Cheers, Barry, thank you.